The mansion of Eduardo Montero, a man known in every corner of the city for his wealth, his influence, and his tragic story, had become a house of shadows. After the sudden passing of his beloved wife, silence weighed heavy in every hall. Every chandelier seemed to shine with less brilliance, and the air itself carried a sorrowful chill. Yet it was not only Eduardo who bore the grief. It was his twin daughters, Isabella and Helena, two radiant souls whose laughter once filled the estate with life. The girls had not slept peacefully since the funeral. Night after night, they tossed and turned, whispering to each other under their blankets, their small hearts unable to comprehend the void left by their mother. Eduardo, though devoted, was consumed by the responsibilities of his empire. Meetings, boardrooms, endless signatures, and business dinners kept him away, and though he provided the finest tutors, doctors, and caretakers, none could soothe the restless spirits of his daughters. Their insomnia became a torment, not only for them, but for everyone who tried to care for them. Doctors prescribed remedies. Therapists spoke of trauma. Nurses tried lullabies, lavender oils, and warm milk. Nothing worked. Eduardo began to despair in silence. He would stand outside the girls' bedroom door at midnight, listening to their whispers of fear, their fragile voices asking when their May would come back. And though his heart shattered, he was powerless. It was then, in the midst of this quiet storm, that someone unexpected entered their lives. Anna, a simple faxineira, a cleaner no one truly noticed. She had been hired temporarily through an agency to help manage the overwhelming maintenance of the estate. Anna was poor, young, and invisible to the powerful. Her hands were rough from scrubbing floors, her shoes worn from long walks to and from the bus stop. Yet behind her tired eyes lived a spirit shaped by resilience and a heart overflowing with compassion. One evening, when the staff had retired and the mansion was dim, Anna lingered. She heard the muffled cries of Isabella and Helena from down the hall. No one else seemed to notice. After all, the night nurse had already given up trying to lull them to sleep. Anna paused with her cleaning cloth still in hand, her instincts telling her to step closer. She hesitated, for it was not her place. A woman like her did not cross the line into the affairs of the rich. But something in the sound of those sobs tugged deeply at her soul. She walked softly to the door, knocked gently, and whispered, "Meninas, voces este obeyem?" The twins froze. They weren't used to strangers speaking to them in such a tender, motherly tone. Slowly, Isabella opened the door, her little face streaked with tears. "We can't sleep, we're scared," she whispered. Anna's heart tightened. She stepped inside the lavish room, a world so different from her own cramped apartment where three siblings shared one mattress. She looked at the girls, not as the daughters of a millionaire, but simply as two children in pain. Without thinking, she set her cleaning supplies aside, sat on the floor beside their beds, and began to hum. It wasn't any ordinary tune. It was an old lullaby from the countryside, a song her own May had sung to her when storms rattled their tin roof and hunger gnawed at their stomachs. A melody woven with warmth, love, and memories of resilience. The girls listened. Their breathing slowed. Their wide eyes softened. For the first time in weeks, their little bodies relaxed. Helena climbed down from her bed and nestled into Anna's lap, closing her eyes to the rhythm of the song. Isabella followed, clutching Anna's hand tightly as though afraid to let go. Within minutes, the two sisters fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, their faces serene. Anna sat silently, afraid to move, tears slipping down her cheeks. She hadn't planned any of this. She only gave what she knew, the lullaby of a mother's love. What Anna didn't realize was that Eduardo had returned earlier than expected that night. He had come upstairs, restless, and found himself standing at the threshold of his daughter's room. What he saw struck him with a force greater than any business victory or fortune gained. His daughters, who had not closed their eyes for weeks, were asleep, peaceful, safe, held not by expensive therapies, but by the arms of a woman the world considered invisible. Eduardo leaned against the doorframe, his throat tight. He hadn't cried since the funeral, but in that moment, he felt tears prick his eyes. It wasn't only the miracle of his daughters sleeping. It was the reminder of something he himself had lost, the quiet, unmeasured power of love, the kind no money could buy. From that night, something began to change inside the mansion. Anna, though still humble and quiet, became more than just a faxineira. The twins sought her out, asking for her stories, her songs, her presence. They laughed again, smiled again, found comfort again. And Eduardo, though cautious, found himself drawn to the simple grace of the woman who had given his daughters what he could not. The staff whispered. Rumors stirred. Some mocked the idea that a poor woman from the favelas could matter in the world of the Monteros. Yet Eduardo saw what they could not. That Anna's presence carried something that no wealth could replicate: humanity, warmth, authenticity. And so, slowly, night after night, Anna's lullabies filled the mansion with life again. The once silent halls echoed with laughter. And Eduardo found himself standing in the shadows, watching with wonder as the woman everyone overlooked became the light his daughters, and perhaps even he, had been searching for. The twins clung to Anna as though she were a bridge between their pain and peace, and Eduardo found himself silently watching the gentle magic unfold. At first, he told himself it was coincidence, that perhaps exhaustion had finally claimed his daughters that night, or maybe the melody only distracted them briefly. But when the second night came, and then the third, and every evening after, the same miracle occurred. Anna's presence brought calm, her songs drew sleep like the moon draws the tide. The change in the girls was undeniable. They no longer woke screaming in the middle of the night. Instead, they dreamed softly, sometimes whispering in their sleep with faint smiles. During the day, their moods shifted as well. The same children who had been fragile and withdrawn now laughed when Anna told them silly stories of her childhood in the countryside, about chasing chickens or pretending broken pots were princess crowns. They begged her to braid their hair, to sit with them at breakfast, to show them how to fold napkins into little flowers. Eduardo tried to resist, tried to convince himself that Anna's role was temporary. She was still, after all, just a cleaner. His world was one of contracts, negotiations, elegant banquets, and carefully measured appearances. How could someone like Anna fit into it? Yet each evening when he returned from work, he would see his daughters running toward her, their small hands gripping hers, and something inside him softened. For the first time in months, Eduardo began canceling late-night meetings. He came home earlier, drawn not only by duty as a father, but by a growing need to witness the light that Anna had brought into his fractured home. He watched the way she carried herself, without pretense, without fear of judgment. She did not try to impress him, nor did she shrink from his wealth. She simply existed with an honesty that disarmed him. Still, not everyone welcomed this change. The household staff grew uneasy. Some feared that Anna was overstepping, that her closeness to the twins might threaten their positions. Whispers spread like wildfire. The poor girl is trying to trap the millionaire. She must have planned this all along. She sings lullabies but hides ambition. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Clara, went so far as to warn Eduardo discreetly, suggesting he set boundaries before the girls became too attached. Eduardo listened but said nothing. Deep down, he knew what he had seen with his own eyes. Anna's tenderness was no performance. The girls' joy was real, their healing genuine. And though suspicion lurked in the air, Eduardo found himself defending her silently with each decision he made. Anna, for her part, remained humble. She never asked for anything, never sought recognition. When the twins fell asleep in her arms, she would gently place them in bed, smooth their blankets, and slip away to continue scrubbing floors long after midnight. She lived quietly in her small rented room, sending part of her wages back to her younger brother, who was still in school. Yet the bond between her and the twins only deepened. One rainy evening, Helena looked up at Anna with wide, innocent eyes and whispered, "Will you be our May now?" The question struck Anna like lightning. Her heart ached. She could never replace their mother, nor did she wish to. But she leaned down, kissed their foreheads, and said softly, "I can't be your May, Meninas, but I can promise to always care for you as if you were Menias Proprias Ermis." Unbeknownst to them, Eduardo stood at the door once again listening. The words stirred something long buried in him. Since his wife's death, he had built walls of steel around his emotions, convincing himself that love only brought loss, that vulnerability was weakness. But watching Anna kneel there, holding his daughters with such selfless tenderness, he felt those walls tremble. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The mansion changed. Where once it had been heavy with sorrow, now music and laughter returned. The twins learned Anna's lullabies by heart, singing them in the garden while Eduardo looked on with quiet wonder. He began speaking to Anna more, small exchanges at first, asking about her day, her family, her life before the mansion. She answered honestly, never trying to embellish or hide her struggles. She spoke of her mother's death, of her father who had left, of raising her younger siblings with almost nothing. She told him of nights she had gone hungry so her brother could eat, of walking miles for work when she couldn't afford bus fare. Eduardo listened in silence, humbled. He began to realize that wealth was not measured in coins or contracts, but in resilience, compassion, and love, the very qualities Anna carried in abundance. And though he tried to deny it, though he told himself countless times that their worlds were too different, he found his heart leaning toward her with every passing day. One evening, at a formal dinner with investors, Isabella slipped into the dining hall, holding Anna's hand. The room fell silent as the men in suits and women in glittering gowns turned to stare. Isabella, unbothered, tugged Anna forward and declared loudly, "This is the one who helps us sleep. This is our angel." Laughter rippled among the guests, but Eduardo's expression remained solemn. He stood, placed a protective hand on Anna's shoulder, and said firmly, "She is more than that. She is family." His words silenced the whispers, but ignited a storm in his own mind. From that night forward, he could no longer deny what had been growing inside him. He found excuses to linger near her, to walk with her in the gardens after the twins had gone to bed, to hear the calm in her voice when the chaos of his business world weighed heavy. She, in turn, tried to keep her distance, fearing the consequences of a bond that should never be. She reminded herself of the gulf between them, of her place in the world. But every time she looked into his eyes, every time his daughters clung to her as though she were the air they breathed, her resolve weakened. The seasons shifted. Winter melted into spring, and the gardens bloomed again. The twins slept peacefully now, but they still asked for Anna's songs each night. Eduardo often joined them, sitting quietly in the corner as her voice filled the room, feeling a warmth he hadn't known since his wife was alive. And somewhere in the spaces between lullabies and laughter, sorrow and silence, something unspoken blossomed, something fragile, something forbidden, yet something undeniable. Would you like me to continue this story for another 1,000 words in the same style, deepening Eduardo and Anna's connection and building toward a dramatic turning point? The turning point arrived on a night when the sky seemed to split with thunder, rain slashing against the tall windows of the mansion. The storm mirrored the turmoil inside Eduardo's heart. He had spent days battling whispers in the city, rumors in the boardroom, and doubts within himself. People spoke openly now. How could a man of his stature allow a poor maid to become so close to his daughters, to his home, to his heart? Investors threatened to withdraw, friends raised their eyebrows, and even distant relatives who had never cared for the twins suddenly appeared, full of false concern, warning him of scandal. But amid the noise of judgment, there was one truth he could not ignore. The light Anna had brought into his daughters' lives was the very thing that had saved them. That night, as thunder roared, Helena woke crying from a dream. She ran not to her father's study, nor to the nurse, but straight into Anna's small quarters at the back of the mansion. Eduardo followed moments later and found his little girl clinging to Anna, whispering, "Don't leave us, please. Promise you'll never go." Anna's eyes lifted to his, full of conflict, and he knew then that she had considered leaving. The pressure from the staff, the judgment of outsiders, the weight of belonging to a world that was not hers, she had thought of stepping away. But in that instant, Eduardo made a decision that would change everything. He stepped forward, placed his hand gently on Helena's shoulder, and said with a voice steady and resolute, "She will not leave. Not while I have a choice. Not while you need her. Not while I need her." The words stunned Anna. She tried to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. Eduardo continued, his gaze fixed firmly on her. "You came into this house as someone no one noticed. You came with nothing but your hands, your voice, and your heart. And yet, you gave my daughters what the world's finest doctors and caretakers could not. You gave them peace, you gave them laughter, you gave them love. And you gave me something I thought I could never feel again." The storm raged outside, lightning flashing across his face, revealing the raw honesty in his eyes. "I loved my wife with everything I had. When she died, I thought love itself had died with her. I built walls, I buried myself in work. I told myself that my heart would never open again. But Anna, you tore down those walls without trying. You reminded me that love does not replace, it expands. My daughters do not need someone to be their mother again. They need someone to love them as fiercely as she did. And I need someone who can remind me that I am still alive." Anna trembled, tears brimming in her eyes. "Eduardo, I am just." He interrupted firmly. "You are not just anything. You are the woman who healed my family. And if society cannot understand that, let them talk. Let them whisper. I will not sacrifice the happiness of my daughters, nor the truth of my heart, for the comfort of their approval." Helena and Isabella, still nestled against Anna, looked up with shining eyes. Isabella's small voice broke the silence. "Papai, does this mean she stays forever?" Eduardo knelt, bringing himself to their level, and kissed their foreheads. "If she will have us, then yes. Forever." The twins squealed with joy, clinging to Anna even tighter, as though afraid she might vanish into the storm. Anna's tears spilled freely then, not of sorrow but of release. She had carried the burden of being unseen, undervalued, always struggling to survive. And now, here in the arms of two children who adored her and the gaze of a man who had finally spoken the truth of his heart, she realized she had become something greater than she ever imagined. From that night onward, the mansion was never the same. The walls that once echoed with grief now pulsed with life. Where there had been silence, there was music, Anna's voice singing, the girls' laughter ringing, Eduardo's deep chuckle returning after years of absence. Gardens bloomed brighter, the halls glowed warmer, and even the staff who once whispered could no longer deny the transformation. In time, Eduardo made his choice known to the world. At a grand charity gala, under the glittering lights of the ballroom, he stood before hundreds of powerful eyes and declared Anna not as his employee, but as the woman he loved. Gasps rippled across the room, followed by shocked murmurs. But when Isabella and Helena ran onto the stage, hand in hand with Anna, clinging to her with radiant smiles, the murmurs faltered. Few could deny the truth written so plainly in the joy of those children. Critics remained. Some called it madness, others weakness. But Eduardo no longer cared. He had learned that wealth without love was emptiness, that reputation without truth was hollow. And for every critic who sneered, there were dozens who admired the courage it took to choose happiness over pretense. As months passed, the city began to whisper a new kind of story. They no longer spoke of a grieving millionaire or of orphaned twins haunted by sleepless nights. Instead, they spoke of a man reborn, of two little girls who laughed again, and of a woman who had risen from invisibility to become the heart of a family. Anna herself never sought the spotlight. She remained humble, often retreating from the glitter of Eduardo's world. But she became a quiet symbol, proof that love, kindness, and authenticity could bridge worlds, could heal wounds, could transform lives in ways that wealth never could. Years later, on a golden afternoon in the garden, Eduardo watched Anna with the twins, who were now growing into young women. They braided each other's hair, sang the lullabies that had once soothed them, and filled the air with harmony. Eduardo felt the weight of all he had gained, and for once in his life, he was not thinking of business, of contracts, of power. He was thinking only of how one woman had entered his life with nothing but a song and had given him everything. The story of Eduardo Montero and Anna, the faxineira who healed his daughters, became more than a tale whispered in drawing rooms. It became a testament that love does not ask for wealth, that miracles often arrive in the humblest forms, and that sometimes the greatest riches are found not in gold, but in the embrace of those who see us when the rest of the world refuses to. And so the twins who once could not sleep found peace. The man who once could not love found his heart again. And the woman who once was invisible became unforgettable. A storm had brought her into their lives, but it was love that built the dawn that followed. A dawn brighter, stronger, and more magnificent than any that had come before.